I remember in college, I'd be like, dude, I cannot sit in that ice bath after the workout. I'm like, this ain't good for you. There's no fucking way. And I text you, this is what happens. It was just like when I said Matt Cat is the voice of reason, you know, when I was talking about Hawaii and how big the waves were. I'm like, Dr. Kevin Lapham is the voice of reason.
Nothing like stars from a paradise. Don't care, cause there's magic in the air tonight. Pretty girl in my ear, she the rarest type. Heaven on earth is right here tonight. I'm in the dream state. I'm in the dream state.
In all-time history, there is no other way. Listen, today, legendary episode. There has never been, there never will be another way. We have one of my best friends that I grew up with. The stories we're going to get into, the knowledge that he has, forget about the story. The knowledge itself is going to be insane. I'm super hyped for this one. It's been on the schedule for a while. Finally lined up. We got Dr. Kevin Lapham. How we doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing great, pals. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Dude.
This is awesome. Seeing all your stuff, and I'm so honored to be on here. So thank you.
Dude, I'm honored to have you. I mean, like, we were supposed to actually shoot the episode in the winter when we were firing on the podcast, like every day when no editing was going on. We were just ripping episodes. We had one scheduled. I actually got sick, which is rare, and we had to cancel. I think we had like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday episodes lined up. We canceled all of them. And then just through everything, the schedules, everything we had going on, it kind of just lined up for now, which we're a couple months later, heart of the summer. I think I'm retired from the send as of last night because it got to me, but we are not retired from the Reddcast. In fact, we are full-time on the Reddcast, and I'm super hyped that it finally lined up and we were able to get it, you know. So, you and I go back, best friends. I think we met when? 6th grade, was it?
6th grade, yeah. I came over from Manasquan.
That's right. So you were in Squan with T-Doll,
Yep.
Terrence, moved to Brielle 6th grade.
Yeah, Terrence, Skylar, yeah.
Skillet Home Biscuit, dude.
The big four growing up, we were on Morris Ave. It was me, Terrence, Charlie Mills, and Nick Uhas. So,
that's right.
Yeah, so we had a big squad growing up, Morris Ave for life. We had so much fun. We just played sports all the time, specifically hockey. We loved hockey, so we'd always be playing hockey. But, as time went on, people started moving around. Tara moved to Brielle first. Then I moved to Brielle. Just becoming friends with, obviously, you, Jimmy, Tom, McWell, Shane, Albert. I mean, all of us. We've been just so fortunate to, be so tight for so long,
Yeah, we talked about that on Jimmy's episode, which just aired 2 weeks ago, and just the friendships, the relationships that we had growing up, like you just named them all, it's like, and there's a few more, but just so many good people and so many close friends that at any point, Jim said it, you could call if you need somebody to talk to, if you need someone to be there for you. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, you call them and they'll be there for you. And that is something that's super special in this life because not a lot of people could find friends like that. And we're fortunate that we have, a couple that we could do that with.
Only a few real ones left.
Yeah. Only a few real ones left. That's a 1600 throwback right there. And at that time, there were only a few real ones. And now there's even less. There's even fewer now. So, but, I mean, since then, we've all grown up, done our thing. And, you were probably the first of all of us who kind of ended up getting into it to really get into fitness and exercise and things like that. And now you have such a vast knowledge. You're really the only person I'll go to when I have a question. I don't tell these other people, they're all full of shit, I got to know that I could trust the person I'm calling for the advice. And every time I've called you and you've given me exercises, you've given me knowledge on it to help me, whether it be just build in fitness in general, get bigger, stronger, or help me rehab, heal, with the back issues I've had over the years. Every time it has just 100% of the time helped me, no matter what. And I've followed what you told me to do, and it's always worked. So I guess where we'll start is when did you originally get into fitness? I have a memory that it might have been around high school, but when did you first get into, working out and fitness and things like that?
Yeah, I got into fitness. I guess I built up a good base just by playing sports all my life. Wasn't until about high school. My dad had always worked out when I was growing up, whether it be with weights or doing triathlons and stuff. So that kind of set the mold for me. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I want to, do what my dad does. So I actually took my dad's old weights back from like the 1970s. We had them in my basement, and all it was a bench, a bar that was super rusty, a couple pounds on the plates, and a little pull-up bar, and I really got into it freshman year. I feel like freshman year in high school, not too many people are getting into it too much. Some people are like, whoa, Kev's getting, he's getting strong, he's getting big. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool. So I just rolled with it. And I would love watching Muscle and Fitness Raw, Jim Stepani. I just loved watching all of his new videos and just seeing, hey, what's the latest research saying? How can you gain more muscle? How can you, gain more strength? How can you improve your athletic performance? And I just remember doing that and subscribing to Muscle and Fitness magazine. And so that's when it all really started, was in high school.
Yeah, I do remember there was a defining moment where all of a sudden you were massive. And everyone's like, yo, K-Lab is huge, And going back to, your dad and everything like that, he was an insane athlete, like insanely special athlete, and you as well. I mean, I remember we obviously did cross country our freshman year.
That's
I retired after that. But I just remember you just going through the records, everything, just, the athletic performance that you always put on was something special. And then you started lifting, and everybody's like, damn, K-Lab is huge. And I remember kind of getting into lifting at that point, but I had realized that you were very serious about it once I saw the results. Now, Jim Stepani, it's funny you say that. Maybe you were the one who put me onto him, but it's funny you say that because when I got really serious into lifting, which was a little bit more down the road, like really serious, everybody lifts. I was lifting for baseball and stuff like that in high school. But when I got serious, I also was researching all his information and amongst other stuff. But when I would watch his videos versus other people's videos, because I'd try to get a variety of information, what he was saying made sense, and also a lot of things he said seemed like they were correct, and there was some conflicting information, as you obviously know. There's so much out there.
So much.
And where you get your information, which is why I say I always go to you, is so important, And I was telling you about the girl Liz Way, who is, she does fitness influencing online. She's a fitness influencer, has built an awesome following. She really harped on that point as well. Like, you got to be careful with where you do your research and who you're getting it from, because now, especially with social media,
oh my God,
everybody, So in terms of when you started researching and things like that, what did you pick as your information that sounded right to you to go? Like, what were you listening to and what stood out to you about what he was saying, about the other information that you got, that really gravitated you towards that information? What should people look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about, research-based. Now I'm a physical therapist, and the field of physical therapy is so research-based. Hey, what does the research say is the best exercises or the best approach to treat shoulder pain or to treat lower back pain? So, it's definitely changed in the, how many years? 15 years since I started lifting or so. So now I really only look for, research-based, and I know how to read, articles now, and really looking for, okay, is the method section sound? Do they properly do this research study? And then I can say, okay, I'm confident in these conclusions and the discussion and all the results that they found. And that's when I'm like, okay, this is good. Yeah, so now it's much more science-based compared to, high school. But Jim Stepani was really the first person that I followed that was super science-based. I mean, anytime he was talking about, whether it be caffeine or implementing drop sets or anything like that, it was all research-based. So I loved that. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, he was the first as well that I saw was always talking about the research,
Yep.
the science and the trials. And I think that goes along with, like, when you get into fitness and things like that, so much information out there and all this, you got to try what works for you. You got to try different things and see what works for you. And when you're getting all this information from all different places, it's like, damn, where should I start? Where should I go? And I think when you listen to somebody like that, and you hear about the research and the science, you try those things and then you start seeing what may apply. It was the same with baseball, like how many different coaches there are out there, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I'd be dropping bombs, and one of the coaches I go to would be like, well, you got to fix this in your swing. And I'm like, well, I'm hitting 400 and hitting fucking nukes every time I'm up the bat. So I don't really think I need to change it, And then another coach would be like, hey, your swing is great. I would tweak this or that, and that's where I kind of started to learn was through baseball. Okay, I need to take things from all these different coaches, all these different sources, and find out how it applies to me. Now, when you first started lifting, was there a lot of trial and error that happened at the beginning? Because I think as you go, you learn more and more. But when you first start, it's kind of like trial and error, no?
Oh, for sure. There was so much trial and error. Obviously, I had limited equipment, and then we would lift in the where was that? The weight room at Squan. It was the wood shop on the one side of the building, and then the other side of the building was, Danny Sullivan coming in and putting on like Led Zeppelin, and we were like, okay, well, if Danny's lifting big, we gotta lift big too. But there was so much trial and error in there, taking Jack 3D. I don't know what was in that stuff, but in high school it was like, yeah, it makes you feel good, and you attack the weights hard. And I remember I was like, there's got to be something wrong with this, because I would have an awesome workout and I'd come home and I'd fall asleep. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. I think it's since come out that there's some kind of meth or some kind of terrible substance in there that wasn't supposed to be in there.
Yeah, back then they didn't even really regulate it. And even today it says on the, supplementation is not regulated, I don't think, by the FDA.
Yeah.
But, back then it was like things came out later where people were like, all right, you need to really watch what you're putting in these supplements,
Sure.
I mean, it was crazy back then.
Now you get some like third-party testers who you feel like a little bit more confident on. It's like, okay, I think I feel confident putting this stuff in my body.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to I think what people, in the whole day and age we live in now with social media, people are so quick to just do something, feel like it's right, and then go. And I've seen a lot of people post misinformation on certain exercises. I've talked to people that have told me, like, we'll be doing high to low cable flies, right? And they'll be like, yeah, this is hitting my upper chest. And I'm like, dude, it follows the chest fibers of your outer and lower chest. So how does that make any sense, And it's just, there's so many varying things. And again, it goes to the supplements, the research, all the things you can find online. You got to be very careful. And then again, you got to apply it to what works for you also once you get in the gym. And I think to this day, I still find that I'm still in trial and error. I feel like I'm always learning. I feel like new things are always coming out. So going back to when you were looking into college and all that, looking into what you were going to do from college, because again, all the research and all that stuff, you had this knowledge back in high school as well. Like later, and I realized that you just knew what was going on, what you were doing. The results, they speak for themselves, obviously. And when you were getting near college, how did you decide that you kind of wanted to go into physical therapy, or was that what you even initially wanted to do?
Yeah, I think it was funny. I was originally in the Academy of Finance.
Yes.
You were in that too, right?
Yes, sir.
So the Academy of Finance was so cool. Both me and Craig were in it. And for him, it was great because Craig was like, oh, okay, I really like this. I can see myself doing this. And now he works for a bank. But for me, we had to do that internship over the summer, and I was like, man, I can't do this. I can't do it. So, in looking at colleges and stuff, I applied business to a lot of places, but then Delaware was actually probably the only school that I applied for exercise science, and I ended up getting in, and, both my parents went there, so I decided to go there. But, just growing up as an athlete, I felt like I was getting hurt a lot. So I knew I wanted to make a difference there. I wanted to, be the person to help people out so that people didn't have to go through what I went through, spending so many seasons on the sidelines in the athletic training room, doing PT. I just thought there must be a better way to help people and, have them stay on the field instead of, always being off of the field getting treatment. So, that was really a big moment for me. And, I arrived to Delaware, and they had kind of a symposium, and they had different healthcare professionals, and they said, here's what you could do with this degree. And physical therapy really stood out to me. I remember one specific recruiter said, you're pretty much the master of the human body. And I was like, that's so cool. Just, knowing so much about the human body, and coupled with the fact that I already loved working out and doing all the research about how to get stronger and whatnot, it just all kind of culminated into the field of physical therapy. So, I guess that decision was made in 2011, and here we are now.
Off and running, and had to be the right decision. I'm going to say it right now, because, what you have going off that, I know, over time, there's this whole thing about rest, and this is something I've learned from you over time, and this is something that you have in the past told me that you really stand by. And it was the first time I heard this concept, right? A lot of people, when they get hurt or when they get injured, they think that they need to rest. and they need to, not be active. And you were the first person that ever, when I had my back issues, right? And this started freshman year of college. I remember I tried out for, the Temple baseball team. And I remember I was working out prior to the tryout, and I hurt my back. And so it kind of started to rehab, and I started to, I was resting, I was doing things, and then I was able to go to the tryout. First throw of the tryout from the outfield, just threw the ball from right field to third base, and just pain shot down my back. And I was like, and it hurt so bad. The next week, I could not walk. I was just like limping all around campus. People were like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? Whatever. I'm like, dude, I don't know. My back and tryouts, whatever. And through that, I remember reaching out to you and trying to figure out how I could, stay active and keep going. And it really came together when I started lifting seriously, like down the road when I got to Susquehanna. Shout out to Susky. And I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep lifting. And there were certain injuries I had that I didn't know if I should rest, if I should keep going. Talk to you, and you had this concept of staying active through the injury to keep you on the field, to keep you in the gym. And this is the first time I heard it. And you started giving me exercises and telling me, listen, you should be doing these, but you should also continue lifting. Now, it's not going to be the same intensity that you had when you didn't have this injury, when you're in the gym and when you're lifting. You might not be able to push the same weight for 5 reps that you're doing now or that you were doing a week ago. You might want to lighten up. You might want to do less reps, a little bit less volume and things like that. But the most important part of it was that you were saying you should stay active, And I guess it depends injury to injury. Maybe there are some that you shouldn't, but it seems like for the majority of them, what I've learned from you is that staying active is actually more important. It's better for healing, and staying in the gym while you're rehabbing, while you're getting better, that was something I never heard. And you were the first person to tell me. I started doing what you told me to do, and it was like, damn, in the past this injury, I might have just stopped and tried to heal and just stay, not active. By being active, by staying in the gym, by doing those exercises along with that, I found that I healed much faster, much better. And it got me back to my 100% capacity of what I could do in the gym way quicker. When did you start to visualize that concept in your mind? And when did you start to learn about that and say, no, you shouldn't be resting, you should be staying active?
Yeah, I think it all started in high school. I would go to, I had various injuries. I had torn labrums in my hips. I had shin splints, which led to stress fractures and patellar tendinopathy and, X, Y, and Z. I feel like I had so many injuries. And it all kind of started there. And they would all say, okay, well, you should just rest and do absolutely nothing. Don't go to the gym. If you have hip pain, don't go to the gym. Don't do any lower body. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So, I kind of listened to them, and after a few years, it wasn't getting better. I was like, this has to change. So that's when I really started to kind of experiment with myself. So for example, with my hip, I've had, hip pain for so long, and I just I said, what if you got stronger, right? What if you built some capacity in the hips and the glute muscles and the quads and everything? It might take on more strength and resilience and may be able to do some more. And it worked. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And I think, what injuries kind of come down to I shouldn't say every injury, but I would say 99% of the time, it's this concept of load versus capacity. So every single tissue that you have in your body, whether it's a muscle, a tendon, a ligament, has a specific capacity that it can take before, you start to break down and have those tissue injuries. So what we want to do in rehab is build up that capacity back, right? And, that's one goal of rehab is, give it a little bit of rest, just chill a little bit. And then, as soon as you're, a couple days after the acute injury, you're working and you're staying active and you're building up that capacity so that you can return to, throwing a baseball from right field to third, all good. Sometimes it's just that straw that breaks the camel's back that really is just too much, load compared to the capacity. And, that's really rehab for me. And my definition of rehab is, being able to train through an injury, right? And train around it and continue to stay active. Because I just think that, the closest thing we have to a panacea for, anything is just exercise. Exercise is just so good for everything.
Exercise is maybe the most important. Being active and doing it in your own way, whatever works for you. You know how many times a week you want to go, the intensity, but it's just so important. And when you were explaining all that to me during the time when I was just learning this for the first time, it made so much sense. And I was like, you know, your whole life you hear relax, rest,
Yeah.
you know, rehab, like, and you're not supposed to stay active. And then you came with that concept of the load versus capacity. And I remember telling you, like, yeah, I'd be doing this much for this many reps and then this much, and then I felt it. And you'd be like, well, the problem is probably because you went over the capacity of what your body can handle. Now, maybe you can actually lift that weight in that moment, but combined with everything else you're doing, that capacity is probably too much. And that
100%.
is what tipped you over, and that is what caused the injury. Now, I remember I couldn't even walk, and I was like, it was so much pain, and you were like, but I hate missing the gym. I hate doing all that. And I remember talking to you, and you were like, you're not going to stop going to the gym. So this is what we're going to do. And you gave me, a bunch of exercises that I could do. And then you explained, hey, this is what you should be doing in the gym. Take it down to this and that. When you started telling me about that load versus capacity, I really realized it. Because I think in the gym, a lot of people, they just want to keep pushing it. They want, obviously, you're there to get better. Like, obviously, and some people just go to work out to feel good. Some people go because it's a mental release. It helps them with their mental health. But a lot of people, when you're younger, and this was my downfall, was that always trying to push it, always trying to push the limits. And of course, you should be doing that. But once you realize that concept of load versus capacity, you realize, okay, I think I should not be pushing it as crazy in this moment now. So that way, in the future, I could continue pushing it and then get to that point, And it's kind of like a slow build over time. Is that what you found? Is that the slow build over time kind of going to almost say 80, 85, 90% of what you thought you could do will help keep you, give you more long-term success in the gym?
100%. Yeah. You see it all too often, and unfortunately, people come into the clinic and, I treat them for, say, pec tears, right? They have a complete rupture in their pec, and they have to get it surgically repaired. They come to me, and, I help to get them back to 100%. And I can't tell you how many times it's, the guy who's benching for the third straight day, racking up like 315, and then he's lowering it down. And unfortunately, it happens then. So, it's so important to, obviously increase the weight, nothing too crazy, but, increasing the weight week by week, but also giving it rest too. Rest is so important. Especially, as we get older, I've noticed myself that my body just takes, an extra couple hours, an extra day or two to really like 100% recover. And that's so important. And, going from load versus capacity, I just feel like there's so many people who they get injured and they go and see someone and they're like, oh man, it's from all the wear and tear you did on your joints from playing, all those crazy sports growing up. And that's not really the case. The case is, you may be a little bit older, you're not used to that activity, and then all of a sudden, you're 40 years old, been working a sedentary desk job for years, you're not ready for it, and you try to beat out play to first in an intramural softball game, and you tear your hamstring. It's just, it's just that load versus capacity. That capacity wasn't there.
Yeah, and I think it's all works as one system, right? So that whole load versus capacity thing, when you start to realize that everything you're doing goes into that capacity, that's where it clicked for me. Because I was like, it's kind of what I was trying to say before, and I don't know if I said it really clear, is that it's not the direct, correlation to how much weight you're pushing in the gym. It's that plus everything else you're doing.
Yeah.
So like you said, you might be sitting at a desk all day and then you go play softball, and maybe then you're getting in the gym, and it's like all these things are adding up based on your activity levels, what you're doing, how well you're keeping your body, all that stuff. That it's all one system. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, that also helped me with the concept of rest, because it's a balance. So we've talked about obviously staying active. You could stay active through the rehab and all that, but it is important to realize when you're talking about that system of load versus capacity, you need to factor the rest into that to prevent those injuries. And that was another thing that I never really thought about, because I think a lot of people when they're younger too, you're just trying to push it and get better and better and more weight. And that's not the definition of success when you get, down the line. Like, you want to be able to stay in the gym. That's the point. You want to stay active. And that was everything that you just said. It tied it all together for me. And as I got older, I was like, all right, this is what I need to do. And then I started to see better results. Then I saw myself getting stronger faster, and I was able to stay in the gym longer and do all those things. And then, as time goes on, your schedule changes, things change. when you understand that concept and you understand that system that's working together, that, throughout your entire life, it will keep you active way longer, Now, you do a couple different things in terms of physical therapy. You have a couple clients that come to you privately on their own. You say you do some social media things. You also work at a physical therapy office and everything like that. In terms of what you're doing with that, how do you split your time between everything, between your clients that come in where you're working your job, between the private clients and things of that nature?
Yeah, I got a lot. Shout out to Rutgers, also an adjunct professor at Rutgers for their PT school program, so I help out with that a little bit as well. But yeah, I do that. So, I work about 38 to 40 hours a week at an outpatient physical therapy clinic in Hoboken. And then I kind of open up the rest of my schedule to, kind of doing the side hustle thing. The side hustle is really helping people come back from injuries and kind of bridging the gap between physical therapy and returning to play, whether that be, coming back and playing lacrosse, whether that be if you're a powerlifter or a CrossFitter, you just rehabbed a shoulder injury, you don't know where to start. I kind of easy back into it and make sure that, again, long-term success, you're not just hopping in, your shoulder feels good, you're not back to 100%, right? We gotta slowly build that capacity and get you back in there. So it's more long-term, so hopefully that shoulder pain doesn't come back again. So that I kind of open up my schedule for. I love it. I just love, helping people out, and I just get so much joy from, having them return to what they love doing. It just puts a big smile on my face. So, I can't put a number to it, but maybe I toss in an extra, 15 to 20 hours a week, just helping my clients on the side.
Now, in terms of social media and things like that, I know we were kind of talking about it before. Have you been able to use that to kind of spread the word and have more people find out about what you're doing, your research, and your ideas?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
But one of my best friends, Tommy Mandela, he kind of did that. So he owns his own online ACL business, and all of its organic social media following. And from there, he gets, clients from there. And, he treats clients from all over the world, which is really, really cool. So it's possible, just haven't done it yet.
I guess my follow-up question would be, is that something you want to do? Is that something where you would end up doing, even not just straight social media, but doing your own practice or something like that?
Yeah, I think in some capacity, I could definitely see myself doing that for sure.
How, in terms of the split, so how many hours do you do at the actual physical therapy, office?
That's about 38, 40 hours a week.
Okay. And then another 15 to 20, like you said, privately, or who's ever reaching out.
Yep.
Plus your friends like me who, hey, what's going on? I got fucking injured. What do you got, And that's another thing, though. Again, going back to our friendship and everything like that, it's like having somebody that you can rely on and you call and they're there for you. It's cool, because whenever you being that person, that's going to only attract more people that maybe aren't your friends to come your way. And when they hear you talk to them and you're willing to listen, that's, I think, especially in your field, that's something that's big. They want to be comfortable with you as a person. And so every time I've called, you're always like, listen, I'm going to send you some stuff. You filmed videos. You've showed me what I need to do. So in terms of that, let's say someone comes to you, whether it be your friend just calling you up saying, hey, I need some help, one of those clients that you might work with privately, or somebody who comes into your office at the gym to rehab at your actual job. When someone comes to you with an injury, what are some of the things that you first ask them in order to find out where you should start?
Yeah. Well, first we kind of reverse engineer it. I say, what is your goal for, us working together, and it's so different depending on the client. Some people are just like, hey man, I want to run 5 miles without pain. Other people, it's like, hey, I want to bench press, X amount of weight without any pain in their shoulder. So, we kind of reverse engineer it then. And then, we do a screening call. Hey, what do you like to do? All that stuff. And then, we generally meet in person after that. We do an entire comprehensive evaluation. We do strength testing. We do range of motion testing. We do some special tests to identify the specific structure. We look at movement patterns. And based off of that, I pretty much build them a template of, blueprint to get them from point A to point B. Point A being where they are with pain, point B to where their goal is. And, I work with people online, I work with people in person, and, a little bit of hybrid, so a little online and a little in person as well.
Now, when you're designing this program for this person, once you kind of find out the details, what their goals are, where they at with the injury, are you taking into account, so there's other physical therapists obviously working with you throughout the week. Do you guys have a program or a couple programs that you may pull or that may work for everybody? Or where you work, will they be like, okay, Kev, you take this guy and you just go and do what you think is right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A lot of autonomy. So, whenever I have an evaluation at the outpatient physical therapy clinic that I work at, it's kind of just, they come in, they tell me their story, and, I have the autonomy to say, okay, here's what I think it is. Here's what we're going to be doing. Here's what we need to work on. This is how long it's going to take, which is pretty cool. Yeah,
that's cool when the autonomy, like being able to kind of just have that freedom almost and also a big thing with that is the trust, where you're working, you want whoever you're working for to trust that you know what you're talking about,
yes.
And I think, again, it's not even a question for me. I already know because I've tried this. And what's interesting about that is that I remember when I had that back pain most recently, which was 2 years ago.
Yes.
And I remember at that time I reached out to you and I said, I forget how it happened or what happened, and you said, hey, I'm actually designing this new rehab program, and it's for lower back pain. And you had a whole Excel spreadsheet of the exercises, and when I clicked it, it would link it to a YouTube video, like a private video that you had because it was still in its trial phase. And I would click it, I would go to watch, because I didn't know, sometimes you know what the exercise is, but you don't know the name of it, so you click in and then you're like this. But also, it's important to watch somebody who knows what they're doing do it, so you know that you're doing it right. And also, the tips that you put in those videos, like when you do the exercise, you're saying, okay, right now, this is the part that you're working, and this is where you should be feeling it and stuff like that. That program, which was designed to help with lower back pain, at that time was just in its idea phase. Now, in terms of injuries like that, where do you find the most common injuries are for people? I guess you see so many, maybe it's not, but like, I just know everybody talks about back pain, as you get older and things like that. Is there any most common injury that you hear from all different, from people coming in and things like that?
I feel like if I had a dime for every time someone said they had sciatica, I'd be a very rich man. Sciatica, which is, it can be, related to lower back pain. That's obviously super, super common. Ever since, the pandemic, I've seen a lot of people come in with, neck and upper back pain too, just from sitting all the time. I see a lot of shoulder injuries and people who love to lift weights, especially like any overhead press or bench press, ton of shoulder injuries there. In Hoboken where I treat, you just see it, the demographic is, people around our age. I always describe it as people around our age who still think they could do the same thing that they could at 18. So I saw one guy and he was at an outing with his company and he was bowling and, he tore one of his muscles in his forearm because he was going too hard. It's tough to really pinpoint, what are the most common injuries because I really see it all. But I will say, though, that in no matter what practice I've practiced in, lower back pain is always there, always towards the top, is most common.
Yeah, that's what I hear. But from a physical therapist standpoint and from your view, I'm like, he's probably got so many people coming in with so many different injuries. I wonder if there's something that's really the most common, What do you, in terms of these injuries and things like that, what do you think people can do, or what advice do you have for people going to the gym, doing things in their everyday life? What are some things people could do every day to help prevent these things? Like just a common person that could go and maybe they're not injured. Maybe they're just trying to stay active and they want to prevent these things. Maybe some things they don't know about. What are some things that people could do to help?
Yeah, great question. There's no way to entirely reduce your risk of injury and bring that to 0%. But there's been a lot of research in, hey, what can I do to prevent injuries? And one thing that people tend to think contributes to the problem is stretching. But there's been a ton of research, and when it comes to static stretching and injuries, I am like, whoa, that's a big red flag for me. I just think that there's an overwhelming amount of research that says that static stretching, so holding a stretch, so if you're, holding your hamstring stretch like this for a prolonged period of time, that's what we're talking about. When people say that, that prevents your risk of injury, that's not the case. A lot of research has gone into it. Static stretching does not help to reduce your risk of injury. There's been a lot of research studies that have shown that actually strengthening helps to reduce your risk of injury. There was one research study that showed that people in college athletics at the Division I level, if they could back squat more than 2.2 times their body weight, they had a significantly reduced amount of risk of injury, which was really, really impressive. There are these things called systematic reviews that essentially take all the available research and randomized controlled trials, and they summarize them, and they compute it, and they come out with recommendations. Time after time, stretching does not seem to reduce your risk of injury, but it's looking more towards strength is now the big thing that's going to help you reduce your risk of injury.
Yeah, I think especially going off your program and everything that you've told me over time and what I've tried myself through the information that you've given me, building the strength, that is the best way to prevent the injury. And not that stretching is bad by any means, it's whatever, sure. Loosen up. I always go to the gym, I stretch everything 10 seconds, whatever, I get everything loose, and then I start to get active though. And I think once I start to get active, that's when, even with baseball too, it's like they teach you to stretch and do all this. And then I remember I went to a camp and we didn't do any static stretching. We did just dynamic warm up, and that was it. And felt just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
So it really depends.
I'm glad you brought that up. Big difference between static and dynamic stretching. It looks like, if you're trying to get ready and get prepped for any athletic activity, static stretching, definitely not the way to go. If there is, a specific joint in your body that needs to be stretched, some people just have tight hamstrings. Some people have tight calves, which can contribute to limited ankle mobility. That's totally cool to work on. Just do it after, you lift, after you participate in a game or athletic endeavor. But if you're going to do anything before, dynamic warm-ups are great. That's an awesome way to go. From all of the research that I've looked into with dynamic stretching, it doesn't look like it, decreases performance at all. But it's crazy. Even static stretching before, say, running, there's been some research studies that show that it can actually decrease performance. So, yeah, that's a really great point. Just do dynamic stretching before, static stretching after.
Yes, the static stretching after a workout was a concept I was first introduced to back when I started in high school. I was training with Kevin Hawk. And,
nice.
Yeah, it's a throwback, right? My guy Kevin Hawk, and he had Hawk Sports Performance. And back when he was doing these athletic workouts at Green Acres Park down the street here, we had that was back when I was training with, I think, Neil Sterling, Nietzsche Balestrieri. These guys are just stud athletes.
Legends in Madison High School.
Legends and absolute stallion athletes. And that was the first time that concept got introduced to me. And I didn't really put together that you don't really need to do static stretching before. Of course, again, it's not going to hurt. I always do a quick static stretch before all my lifts, just full disclosure, and I'm here talking about how dynamic's better. So it's like, you give and you take. Whatever works for you, obviously you got to apply it to your game. But really helping flexibility and in preventing injury, once you are already warmed up and those muscles are worked out, when you stretch, that helps you increase your flexibility, no?
It can. As far as stretching goes, it's tough to say. So what we know about stretching is in order to improve the length of a specific muscle, we know a couple different things. So we know that over a period of a week, you have to accumulate 5 minutes. 5 minutes in whatever stretch you're trying to work on. In addition to that, it looks like that we want to be not a super intense stretch, but we want to have like a moderate stretch. And in addition to that, we want to do it at least 5 days a week. So if you're trying to improve your ankle mobility, what I usually tell patients is, stretch your ankles out 5 times a week just for 1 minute. 5 times a week for 1 minute. That's kind of the bare minimum to do it. As far as, doing it right after, I'm not sure what the research says about it, so I don't know, but it certainly feels good after a workout to get in some static stretching for sure.
Yeah, that was the thing was, he even said, they said in order to improve mobility and things like that, stretching after, it helps. And it does kind of make sense. You feel like your muscles already warmed up. You can actually stretch it further. Yes. And then over time, that will, again, same concept like you just said, 5 minutes over the course of the week. Over time, if you're stretching it like that, seems like it would improve the mobility and things like that. And also, tying it back into later down the road here when I'm getting information from you, you were also somebody who hammered that concept into me, is stretching is not the greatest thing in order to prove mobility and increase strength and things like that. Because in fact, like if you think about it, when you stretch out the muscle, it's almost like it creates less density. You know, your muscles are kind of tense before you warm up and things like that. And then if you're lifting, you would almost want a more condensed version of the muscle to push the weight up or to pull the weight down, right? So that is kind of where I visualized it. Now, I don't know if that's exactly how it should be explained, but it's almost like the concept of, you know, water. When it freezes, the molecules all come together, and it becomes much tougher, and it's ice, you know? And then when it heats up, the water melts and it's just liquid, and you can fucking punch right through it, but you're not going to punch right through an ice block unless you're a fucking savage like myself and you're carrying yachts up Cocoa Head, baby. Let's fucking go. But for real, that was the concept when you explained it to me. I don't know if that's right, if you could explain a little better, but it was almost like the muscles being stretched out would almost weaken them, you know, and not allow you to put up as much weight. Yeah,
going back to, physics class, the muscle works best when it's at its optimal length tension relationship. So, when you're stretching that muscle, it's just going to elongate that muscle. So it's going to put that muscle at a disadvantage to be more powerful, to be, increase strength. So that's why, and what these people postulate is, you're really screwing with that length tension relationship. It's a little more lengthened and it just can't produce all that power, can't produce all that strength.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of visualizing when you explained it to me. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense. You know, it's interesting. The thing with going back to the whole online thing, when you hear these people talking, a lot of times somebody can make it sound like sounds like it makes sense, Yes. And it's just like you hear it and you're like, oh, that makes sense. But then you hear the thing is the law of equivalent exchange. As you know, when I was younger, I was like, dude, I know what I'm talking about, this and that. And then
I hear you've never been wrong.
Yeah. I've never been wrong. That's for damn sure. Never, not once. But as I've got older, you know what the thing with never, I'm going to let people in on a little bit secret about how I've never been wrong. You know why I say never been wrong is because I try, and usually I can, never argue, or usually I'm successful at not arguing something I don't know. So if I know something, like when it comes to baseball or something like that, I'm not going to argue something I don't know about. So like if I'm going to you for information about exercise and fitness, I'm going to ask you and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. And there's no points to be argued because I'm listening to what you're saying. Now, when I was younger, it wasn't like that. I wasn't going to all these people for advice. And I was just like, this is how it's supposed to be done. And then you realize later in life, you're like, you know what? You got to listen to a lot of different options. And then again, take it back and apply it to your game and things like that. But it's true. It's like as you get older, you kind of take different perspectives from different people, and I think it works together in all aspects of life. Like the episode that we just dropped this week was with Matt Cat, who's Matt Paul, as he goes by. That's his photography. And Matt Paul Catalano, he's an absolute legend. But one of the things he talked about was traveling the world and gaining perspective. And I think a lot of a concept that I've kind of learned in life is that as you get older, all these things work together, like traveling the world and gaining perspective. That has allowed me to sit back and listen to other things, like when I'm learning about fitness or I'm learning about other things. So I think that kind of point, bringing it all together, it's just like, it's really cool to, when you don't know something, listen, but then also seeing another point of view as well. Now, when you're looking at research and it comes to something where you're looking at a new experiment that you've just read about, and then you're developing your own, how do you go about starting to develop a new program based on the research you already know? So, like, for instance, you have such vast knowledge of all of these things. You have such an in-depth knowledge. When you're trying to, say, like that back program that you put together for me, when you were or not for me, but when you were putting it together and I was testing it out, how do you go about applying things you already know with things you want to test?
Yeah, I think it's... I think there's three pillars. So one is what the latest research evidence shows based off of that specific topic. The other one is, what I've seen in my experience work. And the third one is, the client's values. So what do they value? So let's say, for example, they love stretching, right? I'm not going to be like, well, this shows this. I'm probably going to toss in some stretching because the placebo effect is very powerful. So, even though you have all different kinds of physical therapists. You have the strength physical therapist. You have the yoga physical therapist. I consider myself a strength physical therapist. I love strength and all that stuff. But I'll toss in some stretches every once in a while if they really love stretching. or obviously if they actually need to focus on mobility and improve range of motion, obviously I'll do that too. But I think it's really those 3 pillars and just kind of, tweaking it a little bit and just, going from there.
It's interesting because as somebody who like develops these programs and things like that, I would wonder, there's so much research out there that you could just follow, but then there's always ways to improve and learn new things. So it's interesting to hear from somebody how they take knowledge that's already, all this stuff that's already known, and then apply it to maybe a new program that can help even better, Yeah. And it goes back to the whole trial and error thing. I mean, as you try different things, you learn more, and there's different studies coming out all the time. Do you guys have a specific place? I know you said like you'll go, there's certain people that you look for to research. Is there anywhere that you guys go like as a whole or in this industry that people go and look for new research, or where people post new research? Or is it kind of just like individuals post it on their social medias and that's where you find it?
Yeah, I think that, so we actually take classes in physical therapy school of how to search the research for a specific topic, as well as how to dive into the specific research study and to see, okay, is this a good study? Is this not a good study? Was it well designed? Was it not well designed? How useful is this study that I can actually, use it in my practice? So, we kind of do that. And then once you're in the field for a while, so for example, there's this guy by the name of Dr. Schoenfield, and he's really big into like muscle hypertrophy and stuff. So like if he comes out with a new study, I'm like, oh man, what has he got? Because I know he's a great researcher. He's been on a lot of podcasts, and you can learn a lot from him. So you start to see who are the big heads in those specific fields, and when they come out with new stuff, if you're following them on like Instagram or whatever, or if they hop on a podcast, they'll talk about a recent study, and you're like, ooh, this is cool. I got to check this out.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys that I've found with people that I listen to over the years is that I listen for whether or not they have also taken in other perspectives and thoughts, because a lot of people, again, going back to me when I was younger, it's like, this is the way. When I hear somebody who talks like that, where like, this is the way you should do it, this is it, it's an absolute, and they don't kind of talk about whether or not they've taken into account other perspectives or have done trial and error, that kind of almost pushes me away. I like to hear that people have seen different points of view and taken that into account when making their decision, and based on what they have found, this is what you should do and things like that.
Backs up their decision, right? It's like, okay, this person knows so much, and he's a pretty malleable person, that if they're changing their view on something, that speaks a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I feel so much better now that I'm able to take in other perspectives, because I'm like, damn, back in the day, I wouldn't have listened to me either. You know what I mean? And it's like, now it's just like, okay, taking in all different points of view, all the knowledge you learn. And again, having people to go to that know more about the subject matter than you do is so important. You got to be able to sit back and say, okay, I really don't know about this. This is new territory for me. Who can I go to find this out? And that's why I always go to you, because I trust what you do, and I know you're doing the research, and I know you're taking in other perspectives and other research that you've seen and learning from different people. So in terms of lifting and fitness now, what kind of workings are you doing? Because I know there was like a whole CrossFit era. There was the hypertrophy era. We're doing fucking 8 to 12 reps, just benching, incline dumbbell, 110s, 120. So what are you doing now, and how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I've really found that over the past couple years, just my frequency of working out 4 times a week in the gym is perfect for me. I've recently taken up golf, so I love to golf like once a week. But yeah, the 4 times in the gym is perfect for me. I follow this guy, Marcus Philly, his programming. I think it's a perfect blend of like strength training, but also you get some metabolic conditioning, like those quote unquote CrossFit workouts in there as well. He's got some really great programming for that. But yeah, my body just likes it. I just found 5-6 days a week in the gym, my body doesn't like it. So I like rocking with 4. That's what I like doing.
It's interesting because, again, I've done the 6, I've done 7 days where it's an active rest day, and then I've done 2 or 3 days a week, and it's like you kind of just find it out over time. But one thing that has never changed with you is that you're putting up numbers. So it just throughout the years, it's like I've noticed that no matter what style of workout you were doing, it was like no matter what, you were always putting up numbers. Now, what are some of the best exercises you do currently that other people can try to add into their workouts, maybe if they don't do them now?
Yeah, I think not even so much exercise selection, but just how you approach every exercise. I've really found that tempo is phenomenal. Tempo is great because you do lighter weights. You know, you gotta check in the ego at the door as soon as you walk in. But tempo's awesome. It feels great. My joints just feel awesome. You know, you get a crazy pump, your muscles are working really hard, but yeah, it's just a little, you know, for me, it just feels like less stress on the body, even though you're still getting great, you know, muscular adaptations with strength and hypertrophy. So I do that. I even implement that in my, you know, physical therapy with my patients is, oh, we're going to do leg press. Oh, no, that's way too fast. We're going to be going 3 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds on the way up, and people hate it. But, you know, the results are great. I mean, there's just, you know, it just feels great. There's a lot of, you know, research on, you know, that tempo and building that time under tension can really improve, you know, muscular strength and hypertrophy. So that's what I found over the past really last year and a half. I've really implemented in my workouts and really carried over to all my patients' workouts. And I've had some really great results.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that just reminded me about when I got tricep tendinopathy. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Tricep tendinopathy?
I remember driving to work and you're like, dude, I got this shoulder pain. And I was like, or this tricep pain. And I was like, hey man, here's what we're going to do. You're not going to like it, but we're going to go really light. We're going to focus on tempo, but you're still going to get a great workout in it. And you're like, all right, sounds good. And you stuck with the program. You know, you to a T nailed the blueprint, what we spoke about on the phone. And how's it been feeling?
Dude, I mean, listen, when that happened, right, I'm like, you know, obviously I've heard the concept time under tension. That's a big thing, right? And so what you said is, again, it went back to don't stop lifting. You can still lift based on what the injury was. That's not the same for every injury. We got to nail that point. And don't just think if you're injured, you got to just keep fucking going. We're not saying it's the same for everybody. We're not saying it's the same for every injury. That particular injury that I had, you said you're not going to stop lifting. This is how it's going to heal. And you were like, it's funny. Because you're like, you heard it lifting, right? But the way you're going to heal it is lifting. And it was funny, you know, at the time I was kind of laughing, but it was true. And so instead of continuing to train like I was training, you were like, we're going to tweak the way you're training, and that's probably what's going to get you to the other side. Now, I followed what you said to the T, like you said. Exactly. You did. And I was doing less weight, time under tension, say like 3 to 4 seconds down, 5, whatever it was, you know, and what I found actually is, you said with the tendons, they tend to like heavier lifts better. That builds the tendon strength, I think, a little better, is doing heavier.
Yeah, when they're irritated, right? They don't like that high velocity stuff, but they love load. And you got to load it up to get them stronger, which in the end, you know, you get the muscle stronger, which in turn gets the tendon stronger. And that's how you get better with tendonitis. So
yeah, so when I originally heard it, I was doing 225 bench, right? Which is, you know, everybody loves a 225 bench. But I was like, yeah, I can
NFL combine, baby.
Yeah, NFL, I was doing it for like 3 to 4 5 reps, you know, at that time. And I remember I hadn't been in the gym for a while, and I put that on the bar, and I worked up to it, but then I just felt the click, right? And I was like, damn, oh, this does not feel right. And I realized that the pain was going to continue. It wasn't something that was just like, oh, you know, you feel it and then it goes away. And so you go from doing like 225 for 5 reps at a faster tempo to like, you're like, drop it down to now say 135 and then resist on the way down for 5 seconds, then push up for 3 seconds, right? And I think over time, or actually I know over time, I actually got healed so quick from doing that. It just strengthened the tendon so well. And actually, when I came out the other side of it, based on the timeline you told me, it probably will take around this much time to heal. But of course, we're going to check in like a couple weeks and we'll figure out where you're at. At the time of when you said it should be about 100%, I was doing heavier weight for more reps than I was when I first started with the, you know, prior to the injury.
Yeah, there we go.
So I was like, damn, and that helped open my eyes to, or, you know, open my mind to doing training like that in general, like heavier and slower and controlled. And I found that, again, variety is always good. I like doing, you know, I like getting the pump. I like doing 15 reps on fucking high
everyone
flies
does.
And just walking around with a massive chest, incline dumbbell for 20 reps, and you're just staring everybody down in the gym like, who the fuck wants it, dog? But, you know, it's so true, and I found I was stronger at that point, you know? So I think that's cool, is like, it's interesting, you know, you face setbacks in life, not just in lifting and things like that in general, and it almost can help you learn, a different perspective. And I think that's something I found is when you face a setback, and I think this is also an important concept that I learned through a lot of things that you told me, is that when that happens, it's not the end. You always are upset because you're like, damn, I can't continue to work out and this and that. Then you learn the concept load versus capacity and that you can stay active. And when you face a setback, there's almost like a reason for it, And now that's a concept, or that idea, the rehab program that we use, the sets, the reps, the tempo. I've applied that to my everyday training, and that has helped me. Have you seen, or have you had other experiences with other clients and other people that that have had that similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to always just, get them back into exercising, because as we talked before, exercise is just so good for you. So, I'll toss in, and I'm always educating, the patient or the client on everything, like how important, just like something so simple as walking is. So I love when patients, I run into them on the street or something and like, Kev, I've been doing what you've been telling me, man. I've been getting in my steps, I've been hydrating well, my sleep has been well. And I'm like, oh man, cause that's the biggest thing, right? Is to keep them active. And when I hear that stuff, it's amazing. Or, I work with a client in the gym and, I see them, doing a little warm-up exercise. They're activating the glutes. They're activating, their global core. I'm like, oh, nice. Way to go.
It's cool because when you do something like that, or when maybe you have a setback where you do have an injury, you start to learn things that help you no matter what time, whether you have an injury or not, know? And you're like, when you explain it and you again, going back to those videos that you would send me and you'd be doing the stretch and say, okay, this is where it's working right now, or the exercise, not the stretch, but you're doing this and this is where it's going to work out. This is the point where you should feel it. People learn that, and then it's cool because all those back exercises that you gave me over time, it's like I'll do those some days just to prevent injury. Yeah. Like a lot of those things that you're doing during the injury can also help prevent it down the road. And then going back to what you said about the whole yoga thing, I want to talk about this.
Oh,
because
yoga.
Me saying stretch just brought that into my mind. What is your opinion on yoga from a physical standpoint, and then maybe even from a mental standpoint? Do you do yoga, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that yoga is awesome. Going back to just keeping people active, if that's something, it all goes back to like what you love doing, right? So some people really love yoga. That's amazing. For me, it's not for me. I think for me, I just the poses and stuff, and just bringing me to end ranges, and I'm just not used to it. I'm sure if I dedicated myself to practicing yoga, 2 or 3 times a week for a few months, my body would be feeling pretty good. But my back just doesn't feel great with yoga. So for me, I'm not I don't personally do yoga. But I know so many people who love yoga. They love doing it. That's their form of fitness, and I think that's awesome, because that's it, man. You gotta pick those things that you love doing, and that's how you're going to stay active,
That's such an important point, is that I think people tend to also hear things like a conversation we're having and they're like, okay, well, I need to do this. And it's like, wait a second, you're not going to be able to consistently keep going if you're doing something you don't like.
Oh, 100%.
Right? So if yoga is your thing, and that's good. And by the way, I love yoga. I don't do it every day. In fact, I haven't done it in a while, but I remember during the whole pandemic era, Terrence would come over, and he's obviously a yoga instructor. He's certified, and that's one of the things he practices every day. That's what he does. So good for mental health and clarity. And I remember during that time, it was like vital, and it was like we were doing it every day, and it was that was the first time I really got introduced to it. And I was always curious what your thoughts on it, because again, there's certain different types of yoga. The type of yoga we were doing was stretching everything out, and it's kind of opposite of the strength versus stretch mentality. But for my mental health, I found it was so good, and I found that it really was helpful in that sense. And then in other aspects, I know some people play baseball. Like even Derek Jeter talks about it. He's like, man, I wish I was doing yoga like earlier in my career. And I think there's Mike Condon, our good friend as well, who you go back with. Yep. Obviously, we played for him for a while, and he's been just a huge influence in my life over the years. He talked about how he started yoga, and he would just notice the difference in terms of throwing. He'd be, throwing BP or just warming up with someone, and he'd be going at the same percentage effort that he normally does, and he saw a little bit more velo on the ball and things like that. So it's cool that those types of things work in different ways for different people. But going back to what you just said, you got to find what works for you and what you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, if there's no enjoyment in the process, then you're just going to stop and you're going to quit.
100%. I will say now, confess that whenever I see Turkish get-ups in programming, I don't do them. I don't do them. I just know I'm not going to show up to the gym if I have those on the program. So I'll try to like swap it out for something else. But yeah, I'm not a Turkish get-up guy. They are so tough. So for me, that's my thing, right? Like I'm going to do my strength stuff, but just don't toss in Turkish get-ups.
Yeah, it's cool because again, there's no absolutes in it. So it's like that for you was like, no, you know what, I'm not going to do it. It's so funny. I'll be working out with somebody. We might be done working out. They're like, all right, time to go hit cardio. I'm like, I'll see you later, buddy.
Yeah.
I will not see you on the treadmill. I'm sorry. I've done, you know what the thing is too, though, important to note about that is like, you won't know until you do the trial and error, right? You got to try things and you got to, you can't just kind of ignore it right off the bat when you see it and you're like, no, I'm not going to like that. Try it out and see what works for you, because there was a time where I was doing cardio heavily at the gym. And then I realized down the line, wait a second, if I keep my diet straight and I continue to train with this intensity, then I might not need the cardio to stay this lean, And that's where the whole trial and error. And then again, going back to if you find that you love it, find what works for you and what actually works in general, find the best combination of those things and then continue on with that because that's I think the best mix, the best equation for, long-term success and being able to continue doing it over time.
That's it. Yeah. Especially for, if you want to be active throughout your whole entire life. You really got to just find that thing that you love and keep doing it. Not too much. Do it at a good clip. We're not trying to exceed that capacity, but and keep doing it. If you love golfing and that's your way of getting out and walking the course, you're getting like 5-6 miles. Absolutely, keep doing it. That's amazing. If it's going to yoga a couple times a week, amazing. Strength training a couple times a week, awesome. Whatever you love doing, just keep doing it. Exercise is just so important for, health and well-being.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people over the last couple of years have really brought to life how important it is for mental health too. And I don't know if I'm sure you've over time have found this as well, but for me, working out and lifting and doing all that, obviously it's great. You want to look good, you want to do that. Maybe that's your reason you're going to the gym. You want to look better, you want to feel better, but in terms of mental clarity, I've found for me that it's helped so much. And because life goes on, right? And different things happen in life, and you're always going to be faced with different adversity. Maybe things are going well for a time, maybe things are going bad for a time. But I found that staying consistent with my exercise over the years has always helped in either situation, whether or not I'm feeling good, feeling bad, something happened at work, it's rough night at Reds. I go to the gym and it kind of helps clear my mind. Have you also found that, over time?
Oh my goodness, 100%. And I feel like if you're dealing with a tough task, right, you work out and I just feel like my mental clarity is a lot better. I feel like I can think more clearly. I can attack the problem, with just more mental clarity. So 100%, so good for your just mental well-being, but also just like focus and attention as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Someone hit me up recently, and she was saying she watched one of the podcast episodes with that I had with Joe DeFeo, right? And she was not involved in any type of fitness prior to that. Maybe here and there, but it wasn't something. What she said to me was, I just wanted to hit you up. I wanted to let you know. I watched that episode you had with Joe DeFeo. This is somebody from our hometown that we know. And she was like, she's an artist. So she does a lot of different art and abstract art and things of that nature. And what she said to me was, two things I never thought would go hand in hand is me and my mental, me wanting to do art and me wanting to exercise. When I started exercising and doing more fitness-related activities, it actually made me want to do art more. It made me more motivated when I got to the art. She was like, before I started doing that, I hit almost like a rut in a creative block.
Yeah.
And then she was like, I started going and I started running and I started doing this. And she was like, literally, she's like, two things I never thought would go hand in hand or affect each other or that were on total opposite ends of the spectrum in life go together so well.
They do. You take a look at, some of the most successful people on the face of this earth, right? And I guarantee you the good majority of them are going to have some kind of fitness regimen in there. I feel like, if your fitness is going on, I feel like everything's just firing on all cylinders. You want to eat a little bit healthier. You want to attack the day a little bit more. Your sleep is on point. You just feel great. You're ready to do anything the world throws at you.
I'll tell you what, anything it throws at you when you go through something like a tough physical activity or things like that, or you're pushing yourself every day in the gym, whatever it may be, doing yoga every day, that push and that work will help you deal with other things that may not. Drew's, obviously, Drew's legend, man. I mean, he's just been absolutely killing it. he's in the music industry, and he said, you know what, I'll go something that might have caused me anxiety or questioning or a big problem I thought in the music industry that I get hit with a text from one of my artists and this is going on. He's like, if I worked out that day or if I go full force in boxing or a basketball workout, that problem doesn't seem as big. You know, it seems much smaller and I'm able to deal with it much better. And I think that's one concept that a lot of people, I think they should kind of grasp their minds around, is that it can help you with everything.
And
it can
it's
help
mental
you with
wins too. I mean, if you're in the gym first thing in the morning and you're like, man, I really don't want to do this. And, you know, let's say, for example, for me, I got Turkish get-ups and I'm like, I really don't want to do it. And I knock out all my sets and reps. I'm super happy. That's a mental win. That's something that I did not want to do and I conquered it. And that goes for more things throughout the day, right? You know, I think there's a lot of carryover. You know, you do that stuff, you demonstrate to your brain, hey man, I could do this. And then, you know, you're able to tackle another problem at work, or you're able to attack, you know, some other problem elsewhere in life. And I just feel like you build those mental reps in the gym, you suffer through it a little bit, and you're like, I'm stronger for it. And it just gives you that capacity to do that elsewhere in life.
Yes, building the capacity mentally. And it's funny because it's like when you're in the gym, you have to put in the work. You have to put in the time. You know, it's not something that happens overnight. And you have to do it in the whole, like, if you're lifting every day, but you're eating cheeseburgers, 5 Big Macs like I do on my cheat day, you know, I'm probably not going to see too many results. I want to talk about diet and nutrition as well. But when you eat right, when you train right, and you see that over time, you have to be consistent with that. Motivation fades. You know, at some point, you're not going to be motivated. But if you're consistent and you continue to do the work and you continue to do it right, you know, make sure the diet's on point. For the most part, it doesn't have to be crazy locked in like me. I eat the same thing every fucking day. But
80-20, you know,
yeah,
80% good, a little 20%, you know, cheeseburger, whatever.
But it's true. Like, you learn that being consistent over time and putting in the work even on the days you don't want to helps you in your other aspects of life, like your job. When something comes up that you don't want to do, you're like, you know what? You learn over time just by going to the gym and doing things like that, you know what? You tackle this task, you get through it, and then you know what? The next day you might do something that you actually enjoy or that you don't have a problem doing, and that's the same in the gym. One day you may not want to go, but you have to be consistent, you have to be diligent, you have to show up, which I always say is the number one thing I've learned through everything, not just in gym, not just working a restaurant, owning Reds, and right, I get. You have to show up. And once you learn that and you learn that consistency and diligence is what will get you to the other side, then that helps you in the other aspects of life because you realize, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to do it. It may not be something I want to do at the moment, but I know I have to get through it because I've done it before in another aspect of my life.
Yeah. Like, you ever take a cold shower?
Let me tell you something about these cold showers here, my friends. Now, let me tell you something about these cold showers, my friends. They're tough. You know,
They're super tough.
The ice bath, the cold shower. Now, this is funny because I've been talking about this recently with my buddy Ryan Starris. We were talking about it. And he said, he's like, just in terms of feeling better in the healing, he's like, last 30 seconds of the shower. He's like, this is how I start. He's like, last 30 seconds of the shower, I'll turn it cold, you know, I'll get it a little cooler. And then over time, he's like, okay, I got used to it. And now if I wanted to, right when I start the shower, bingo, bango, I could go right for the cold, you know? But I'm like, listen, guys, I'm like, I got to take a hot shower. Like, I can't do it. But what I've been doing is taking in other perspectives. At the end of the shower, I've been turning it to more cold, you know? And that way it gets me more used to it. And I'll sit in it for a bit and I'll just push through it. But I mean, I heard they're amazing for you. It's tough. It's tough.
I do feel phenomenal, you know, after doing it. I just go through phases. One week I'll be like, oh yeah, 6 a.m. cold shower. Yeah. And then, you know, the next week I'm like, what was I thinking? I like my warm shower and warm cup of coffee to start off my morning.
Yes.
So, yeah, man, they're tough. But similar concept, you know, you just get through that. It's a mental win and you can, you know, take on whatever throughout the day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so funny because, and you know what's funny is back in college, let's talk about icing after a workout. Can we talk about this? Because this was also something that I always fucking knew. I don't give a damn. When I was younger, I said I was always right. This I always knew. I said, why am I icing after this goddamn workout? I don't understand why I'm just all loose and everything, and now I got to ice, and what the hell? And then you told me that recent research and recent studies show that maybe icing after a workout is not the greatest idea.
Yeah, icing has kind of been a hot topic over the past like 2 or 3 years, I want to say. I think Squat University was, you know, really one of the first people to really spearhead that movement. So essentially what they've said is the guy who invented the concept rest, ice, compression, elevation. I think his name is Gabe Merkin or something like that. He came out with this in the 70s. So back when my dad was taking athletic training classes at, Delaware. So that was the thing for so long. But now it sounds like subsequent research has come out that it shows that it can actually impede, recovery because it's blunting that inflammation process. And, we need that inflammation to, obviously heal and get better. But I feel like there's been this really big trend of, anti-inflammatories, right? Take your omega-3s, get all that inflammation out. And, chronic long-term inflammation is definitely not good. But, we do need that inflammation and that inflammatory response to heal, right? To get bigger, get stronger, have the muscles hypertrophy, get stronger, get faster. So it's really, really tough. So kind of what my stance on it is, if you're trying to recover as fast as possible, so let's say, for example, you have basketball game on a Sunday night, you're in the NBA finals, and you got a quick turnaround, you got to play in a night or two, I'd say go for the ice bath, because what you're trying to do is optimize recovery. We know that ice can really help to optimize recovery, but in the long term, if your goal, say, is to gain strength and hypertrophy, or hypertrophy more in general, we know that, doing, say, an ice bath within 4 hours of lifting can blunt that hypertrophy response. So what I would say is it depends on your goal. Also, I think, when my patients ask me about that, I'm like, I don't know, what do you like to do? Do you like to ice? Do you not like to ice? Because I think the placebo factor is so big. I think that if you're under the assumption that the ice is going to heal you, I'm like, dude, we're going to ice. We are going to ice. You're getting an ice pack at the end of the session, because I do think that placebo effect is very, very powerful. If someone believes that something is going to help them, I think you have to include that, because, psychologically it's going to help them a lot.
Yeah, that the placebo thing in your mind, that's like one of the most important things is, and so many people talk about this in terms of just visualizing success or visualizing the way you want things to go. When it's in your mind and you've made up your mind about something, that's huge. And I think that goes back to that episode. Like, if you think taking a cold shower is going to heal you, if you think taking a cold shower every single day is going to heal you and get you to where you want to, you're like, do it, because being mentally ready. And this is another thing. It's like, again, going back to like when you do exercise and then you have much more mental clarity, taking on a problem after that is much easier. Something that's thrown at you that may have been a big deal prior to that is no longer a big deal. And if you're not mentally ready for it, then, that's what's going to hinder it. It's the same as like when I remember like going up for an at-bat against a pitcher, right? If I have all these things going on in my mind, if I'm listening to what's going on in the stands and all that, if I'm not like mentally locked in, there's like a 99% chance you're not getting that hit or you're not putting the ball in play or you're not going to do what you need to do in that situation. So it's just like, it's funny with baseball, like there's so many, so many people have different superstitions, and it's like, okay, I need to do, but remember Nomar Garcia-Parra, he would step out of the box and he'd work on the batting gloves for 9 fucking years before he stepped back in, Nowadays, yeah, exactly. It's like, but for him, that was like, okay, before every pitch, I'm going to do this. This is my process. It's the same with me when I wake up in the morning. I have a process that I believe gets me ready for the day, and I enjoy that process. And so once I'm done with it, I'm good to go for years. I mean, you give me a 2-hour process with some Folgers for the soldiers, hot. I'm talking Folgers for the soldiers, hot coffee daily. Give me an hour. I've started editing the footage. I'm locked in. Then another hour of posting clips for the podcast or doing whatever. 2-hour process, locked in, ready to go, And it's important that people have that or have something that, if you believe that it's going to help, most likely it's going to help.
Absolutely.
It's a huge thing. And I've learned over time, like even if, because over time, people are like, dude, that's not going to work. That's not how it works. I'm like, let me tell you something. This is how it fucking works. This is how it fucking works for me. So this is how it fucking works. But it was funny when the whole ice thing, like, I remember in college, I'd be like, dude, I cannot sit in that ice bath after the workout. I'm like, this ain't good for you. There's no fucking way. And I text you, this is what happens. It was just like when I said Matt Cat is the voice of reason, when I was talking about Hawaii and how big the waves were. I'm like, Dr. Kevin Lapham is the voice of reason. So I'm going to hit him up. Whatever he fucking says, I will agree. So if somebody's arguing my point, I'm going to say, let's see what Kev says. So I hit you up, and then you were like, well, there's no absolutes, right? It's like it's ongoing research, just like you just said. But what has come out over time is that maybe it wasn't as good for you as everybody thought. And then as soon as I saw that, I said, this is it right here, baby. He said, it's not as good for you as everybody fucking thought. I was right. You were wrong. It's how it goes every fucking time. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But it's just funny, you know, and it's cool when you can joke about it and stuff like that. But it's true. I think everything's ongoing and you learn as you go. And, you know, as you take different perspectives, you learn more and more. Now, going back to what I said about the diet and everything like that, how important do you put nutrition at in terms of fitness and everything?
It's right up there. You know, if it's not, I mean, obviously you need exercise as the stimulus to whatever goal you have, whether to, you know, PR a marathon or to PR a bench press, you know, you have to have that training. But, you know, that training is a very small portion. You know, what are you doing in the other, 23 hours in a day or 22 and a half hours a day, depending on how long you train? You know, that nutrition and your sleep and your hydration are going to build a great foundation for you to really thrive. Because you want to build that environment where you're giving the body a great environment to heal and recover. So it all starts off with sleep, always having a good night's sleep, good quality sleep, sufficient amount of, you know, hours of sleep. And then on top of that, it's, hey, what's your hydration level and what's your nutrition? You got to have the sufficient amount of protein, fats, carbs to meet that goal. Because obviously, if your goal is hypertrophy and you want to get bigger, right? If you're not eating enough, you're not going to go anywhere. You know, it's the same thing if you want to lose weight. If you are, you know, eating too much, if you're in a caloric surplus, it's you know, that scale isn't going to go in one way versus another. So super, super important. And then after that, you know, it's, hey, what's the quality of the food? You know, are you getting, you know, 5,000 calories a day from Doritos, or are you doing, you know, you hitting your protein macros, and then, you know, you're getting in your micros with your vegetables and fruits and all that stuff. So super, super, super important.
Yeah, and there's so many levels to it. You know, when I first started learning about nutrition and how it affected, you know, working out and my body and the way I wanted to look, started with just implementing better food sources.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. I was like, all right, let me switch from whatever I'm eating here and there, white bread, cheesesteak at college, to, all right, grilled chicken and white rice or something, or grilled chicken, brown rice, whatever you like, you know, jasmine rice. You know, I always thought jasmine was the best tasting.
I agree with you.
Jasmine, right?
Jasmine rice, right? So good.
And let me tell you something, the whole brown rice thing, come on, guys. I mean, white rice is, come on, let's fucking go. But so I started with just substituting better food sources into my diet every day. And so whereas I might have eaten that cheesesteak, because I go to the cafeteria at the college, whatever, this is when I really got into fitness. Yeah. Instead of going to the line where they got the cheesesteaks for, you know, dinner that day, I'd go and they always had the grilled chicken and the vegetables and the rice out somewhere. It was always available. Yeah. So I would go and I'd switch that. And then I started to learn about, okay, portion sizes. How much should I be eating? How much protein? How many carbs? How much fat should I be getting every single day? You know, it kind of progressed over time. And I think the little steps along the way is what helped me to get to such a vast knowledge of it now, where, you know, I weigh everything I eat out every day. You know, everything is weighed out. And if it's somewhere where I'm outside or I'm eating out, I have an idea of how many macros are in this or how much protein, carbs, and fats are in this based on all these years of doing it for so long, you know. But if you don't take the first little step in doing it, I think a lot of people find the struggle in, you know, when you talk about fitness and exercise, going back to that whole concept of there's so much information out there and all these things.
I feel like especially in nutrition, I feel like at least exercise, you have a general idea, like, yeah, if you want big quads, like let's get you some squats, let's get you some lunges, some quad extensions. But like in nutrition, I feel like, you know, it works differently for everyone. You know, some people have, you know, great results on keto. Some people have great results going vegan. Some people have great results, you know, on that like carnivore diet or whatever they do. So I feel like nutrition, especially, there is so much out there that you really got to like experiment and see what works best for you.
The keto thing, I remember we're sitting on the beach, and it's funny when people say, so ketosis, right? I mean, I've always explained it when people ask me about this shit. I'm like, listen, I don't do the keto diet. I don't really, so I haven't done vast research, but essentially you want to use fat on your body as your source of energy for burning as opposed to glycogen. So, you know, you want your source of energy to be pulling fat off your body. And it's switching that over from using the glycogen to using fats, the whole ketosis thing. There's all blood work you should be doing and stuff like that. And for the actual like keto diet. So a lot of people just like, yeah, I eliminated all the carbs and now I'm keto. It's like, it's not exactly right. But at the basis of it, you start there maybe. But it's true. You try all these different things, and that's one of the things I learned over time is like, I've never done anything. I've kind of basically kept just a standard diet throughout. I like fruits, I like vegetables, I like those carbohydrates. So I kind of keep that. And then over time, I'll reduce carbs if I'm shredding. If I want to gain, I'll introduce them back into my diet and eat at a caloric surplus. But with all this information out there, what you just said, the trial and error, especially with the diet, that's kind of, you're going to feel, again, actually Corey and I just talked about this recently. So he wanted to understand how the diet nutrition works for fitness and how much he should be eating. I remember this guy's running 10 fucking miles a day eating 1,400 calories. I'm like, buddy, you're burning 800 right off the rip when you wake up and run. I'm like, 1,400 calories. He's like, yeah, I couldn't sleep for a couple. I'm like, well, there's your answer. I mean, you got to eat enough, But you start with the basis of understanding how much you should be eating, what sources you should be eating, and then you dive into the specifics. Now, there's always a good outline to start from in terms of how much you should be eating in terms of, some people will tell you 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And then you got the people who say, well, the exact science is 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. And there's all these different things, right? So you have to kind of research it all. But what you'll find is you'll probably start with where all the research says you may want to start, and then you can increase or decrease things from there. So maybe your body works better with having more carbs as opposed to less carbs, or more protein as opposed to less protein. And of course, there's limits that you should actually be hitting every day for sure. But you can play with it and figure out, okay, maybe my body responds better to more fats instead of all these carbs. And like for me, for instance, when I'm shredding and I start to lose weight, and it's funny, Keith, we walked in the other day and he's like, dude, last time I saw you, you were 20 pounds heavier. I'm like, how are you doing this? I'm like, well, over time, I've learned that, when I shred, I'll start with maybe like 1.5 grams per pound of body weight of protein, and then 1.5 grams per pound of body weight carbs, and then 0.5 grams fat. That's what I would always start with, right? And then as the shred goes, I kind of adjust based on how I'm feeling and the results I'm seeing. So I may start there, but it's not like the end-all be-all. And you have to adjust for your specific body and your specific results. And over time, I found for me, if I keep the fats and the protein pretty much standard or at the same level as when I started, and then I reduce the carbs over time with the same workload, then that works best for me.
So let me ask you this. Okay. The first time you ever tracked your macros, were you over or under? Were you surprised at all at kind of what you found?
Over, under what I thought I was eating every day, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started tracking the macros, I was over, because the things I was eating, or the sources I was eating, were like high, and they were not good sources of food. So like those tend to have more, again, eating a cheesesteak, all those fats and the steak, quality that they're using, plus all the carbs and the white bread and all that stuff. And I started to realize, wait a second. And then I started to realize also, going along with that, it's like I could eat way more like grilled chicken, rice, and broccoli, feel more full,
just the volume,
and still have less calories coming in, So that's where the advantage happened. But when I first started, I was like, I am eating way more than I probably should be. But the thing with that is I kind of got more serious into the diet and nutrition part for actually looking better after baseball ended. So I was always trying to fuel my body, enough to work out, go to school, do all this work, not sleep that much in college, and play a full baseball schedule,
And with that, it's tough to get, so many good quality calories if you're fueling your body as a, collegiate athlete.
Yeah, especially because you can only eat at certain times, around your schedule of what's going on,
Dining hall and stuff like that.
Exactly. And it's like practice, but then once practice is over, that's when you go and eat. You can't eat from 2 to 4 p.m. because you got to fucking go to practice.
Right.
And then, so once that was kind of over for me, and even before that, like when I had a breather from playing baseball, I took off in the fall semester my senior year. So that's when I really dove into the research and was weighing everything out. And that's when I was really heavy into researching what Jim Stepani was saying and watching his videos and other sources. And I remember I went back to college and everybody had that moment that we had with you when you came back and you were jacked and massive. They're like, dude, Red, what have you been eating, dude? Or like, what have you been doing? I'm like, yo, I've been lifting and I've been eating right. I learned more about the nutrition. So what about when you first started? Were you surprised at anything you were eating or how much?
I was surprised at how little protein I was eating.
Yes, that was same for me as well.
That was crazy. And, if you're in this health and fitness journey, I would say just track your macros, if not for like a week, maybe like a day, just like see what you're doing. Cause I was really surprised, and I work out a decent amount, and I was like, oh my God, I'm just, my body just doesn't have the resources it needs to refuel and recover. And once I did see a big jump in strength gains as soon as, the first couple months I started to really hit my protein goals. I was like, whoa. And to this day, that's the only macro I count is protein. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to get this, and at every meal I'm going to get, either a vegetable or a fruit. And then, I'm going to add in some carbs and, add in some fats with like some, pistachios, cashews, whatever. But protein, it was really, really surprising for me.
Yeah, and I think over time what I've learned is that you hammered in this point right here. The protein is like probably the most important. Like if you're not getting enough protein, it's like that's so detrimental to operating, not just in terms of like fitness and things like that, but overall. It's like
building block of every single cell.
Everything.
Skin cell, muscle cell, you name it, it is the building block of every cell.
Yes. So when I learned that, it was like, okay, the protein is never going to change. This is based on what my body weight was at the time. I kind of based it off that. And then I go from there, how I'm feeling, my results and all that. Like I said, it was trial and error. But I realized, I'm like, yo, you got to eat enough protein. And that was one of the things with Corey. I'm like, dude, you are not getting even close to enough fucking protein. I mean, because he was running and then also lifting. Like he'd be running all those miles in the morning. And then he'd go and work out. I'm like, dude, you got to eat some fucking protein. I mean, you got to eat fucking 1,400 calories in protein alone, dog. Yeah. Come on. But, it's true that I found the most important. And then what I found is that when you keep that, people can, once you lock in that protein, and it's true, like you said, even if you just for a day weigh it out and find out, you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
And you'll have a much better knowledge of like, okay, wait a second, I need to eat a lot more protein. I don't need to eat this much, whatever.
Exactly.
And, then you fill in, for me, I've always filled in the fats and carbs after that, just like you said. Yeah. Once I learned how important the protein was, and that's like number one when it comes to macros,
yep.
I was like, okay, now I can fill in the carbs and the fats after. And also because when you're in a caloric deficit, your body is going to turn to using fat as its source as opposed to glycogen. So even if you are eating carbs and introducing those into your diet or not taking them out, you will lose weight if you're in a deficit over time if you're putting in the same workload and you reduce the calories. So this whole thing with the keto, and it's funny because I'm not hating on keto by any means. I think it's great. And actually at the end of all these shreds, the last like 2-3 weeks, like there are no carbs in my diet. So you could keto, whatever. But people will be like, oh, I just started keto, I lost 10 pounds. I'm like, yeah, you just pissed it all out because it's all water weight, Once the glycogen's gone, your body stops holding all that water.
Yep.
And these are things you learn over time. It's like your glycogen, when your glycogen stock, which is your carbohydrates, it gets turned into glycogen, it goes into your muscles. The more you have in your muscles, the more water you're going to hold. You get rid of that, your water's going to be gone. These are things that I'm spewing out very fast right now, but it took years to learn. And that's what people who are trying these diets and stuff, it goes back to the consistency. Like, yeah, I lost 10 pounds the first week. And then all of a sudden they don't lose any weight for like another week and a half. And they're like, damn, it worked so well at the beginning. But it's like, you haven't even given it any time.
That's it. And yeah, all they see is that like, they're like, all right, this is awesome, lost 10 pounds, but yeah, it's just water weight, and, unfortunately, they meet that goal and it's like, well, you didn't really lose too much weight, right? It was just that water weight. And then, they're in that like raffle pool at work and they're like, woo, I won the prize. And then it's back to their habits.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, it's not, I don't like using the term diet because I don't think it's a diet, right? I think it's just like a lifestyle, and you gotta stick to it because that's what really builds those healthy habits that, increase your longevity and your health span over your years.
Yes. And it's like a system like that of balance of everything.
Yeah.
And once you get that knowledge and you understand it, listen, there's a lot of people out there who say it's 0 or 100. I'm doing it all the way or I'm not doing it. And that's like for something that you love and your passion, like baseball, I was all in on. I'm a believer in that. Podcast, I'm all in on it for the rest of this year. That's what I'm doing. That's my focus. But everything works in balance, and you over time, if you learn how all these things work, you're able to apply how it works for your lifestyle the best.
And what works for you.
Exactly. And I think that's the most important. And when the thing is the knowledge, when you learn these things, and that's why over the years, I'm so thankful that I've gone to you and that you've known all these things, because when I go to you and I start to learn these things, I'm like, okay, now I could take that and apply it here in my life. I could apply it here in my life, and it will help me overall in everything else I'm doing.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you moving forward then? Where you're just working on, do you have any current like programs that you're working on developing? Are you researching right now? Or are you just in a mode where you're applying what you've learned over the years? What's going on?
Yeah, I think, I'm really happy with where I'm at. can definitely see a lot of room for growth. But I really think that bringing in technologies, I think that, the pandemic brought in a lot of technologies that weren't previously available. So I think doing, leveraging my time a little bit better with doing, say, like a hybrid model where you have some in-person sessions, but you're also prescribing your clients some online workouts that they could do on their own time. I don't have to be there, but you can check in with me. You could send me, form reviews of your squat, of your deadlift, if you're working on something, and just kind of checking in that way. I think that's where I see myself to just, free up my time a little bit more while still getting some really great outcomes.
Let's fucking go, dog. Fire me the fuck up one time, dog. Yes, and one point I want to hammer in again, I encourage people to really, when they're doing research, when they're learning things from people, just take in whatever you can, try to find a variety and pick what works for you, because over time, you will learn things and you will find out, hey, I wasn't doing this, and this is something over time that you've given me. It's like so many different lifts I was doing and so many different things I was doing that weren't being done correctly, So I encourage people to really try to take in different varieties of information and reach out to people that may know, that maybe research online. Try to find people that know more about the subject than you, because it really is going to help you over time, And, talking about someone like you has all this knowledge and things like that, I'm so thankful that I have somebody that I know, one of my best friends I grew up with, that I could go to, and you may not have that person, but there is that information out there, and the more information you take in, the better understanding you'll have, and the better you'll know what will work for you. And that's, I think, the most important point of it all.
Very well said.
Let's fucking go, dog. What a fucking episode. Well, dude, thank you for making this happen. I know you got to go back up to Hoboken now, but this conversation was amazing. I think people are going to get a lot of good information, and man, I had a blast.
Absolutely, pals. This is my first podcast ever, and I loved it. So thank you very much.
All fucking day, baby. The Reddcast. And with that, we're out, baby. Let's go. All fucking day.